Hey guys, how's it going? It's Etanyos here. Welcome to this in-depth scouting tutorial on how to scout in NHL 24. Today we're going to be jumping into a franchise mode. I'm going to be showing you all of the necessary details you need to know to scout 200 plus full bar scouted players in every single draft in NHL 24. Really, the method hasn't changed much over the past few years. I'm just doing an updated video for this game mode. But starting things off, the first step you are going to need to make sure you pay attention to is when you're starting your franchise mode, and it's how to set up your save properly. So the first four things when setting up a new career in franchise mode don't really matter unless you're doing a ton of division realignment and stuff like that. Even then, it won't play into the scouting necessarily. The things that are going to play into the scouting are 1, owner mode, and 2, player morale. Those two things are extremely important. If you're going to be touching those settings, I recommend that you don't really play with a whole lot of settings on, mainly because if you have Fog of War on, you're going to need to do way more scouting. Really, Fog of War doesn't really change much because really it just means you have to scout your own team, which in my opinion doesn't really make sense. As far as all the other settings go, you don't want to do any kind of auto settings because those are just going to play against you essentially and set up. It's going to make sure that you don't have to do scout hiring and actual scouting and things like that, which is the exact opposite point of this video. So those are the first two settings you really need to pay attention to. Once you go into overview, of course, you are going to need to pay attention to a couple more settings here. The first setting here being, don't mind me changing around a bunch of these things, but the first setting you absolutely need to pay attention to here is going to fall under auto scouting. Now, as you can read on the screen here, auto scouting has 4 different settings. It has pro scouting only, amateur scouting only, both, or none. So what you can do with none, it shuts off scouting altogether. With both, it's going to auto scout for both pro and amateur, or you can just single either of those out. My recommendation for this video is that you are going to leave this off. You're going to do none for auto scouting. You don't want auto scouting to happen. For the sake of just an example, we're going to leave this on. It will come back a little bit later in the video as far as both being on, and you guys will see that in a little bit. I will reference it once it actually comes up. So that is pretty much it for settings. Really nice and quick. You don't have to spend a whole lot of time here. You can change all the other settings in your saves to however you like them. That's what I normally do, is I make sure that, most of my settings are changed. Of course, draft class quality, pardon my English, and generated prospect quality. If you set these to high, you're going to get just extremely better players. That's just how it works. In this case, I like to leave these on medium most of the time. I have played high in the past, and high just kind of gets out of hand after like 5 seasons. You just have a ton of like elite players in the team or in the league, and it just kind of doesn't really help. As far as simulating goes, you might want to turn morale meetings off if you're playing with morale on. Again, you don't have to play with morale on. I just simply play with morale on because it allows my players to potentially get up to like a 99 overall franchise player. So like Connor Bedard does have the potential to get up to 99 with morale on. If morale's off, he can only get up to about a 96 or 97. So that's always a good little piece of knowledge to know as well when you're setting up your franchise save. So I think without any further ado, we're ready to jump into the save, and then we'll start talking through how to actually set up your scouts. All right, so the second step for setting up your save and getting really good scouts eventually is to go to, of course, your assigned scouts tab. You can do this in the quick links, or you can go over to coaching staff, and then just below coaching staff is assigned scouts and upgrade your team. Again, these are pretty basic, kind of just menu movements, things like that. Nothing you really need to worry about too much. But as you can see with auto scouting on, my pro scouts and amateur scouts have just immediately gone and scouted what is mainly potential and comparison, which isn't bad per se, but not the style that we're going to want to do here. So that's what happens when you auto scout. Auto scouting just sets it up for inefficiency, essentially. So the first thing you guys need to know when you're going through your scouts and trying to pick out who do I keep, who do I fire, we are going to be going with a 20 amateur scout system. So pretty much any pro scouts you could fire. I wouldn't recommend firing anybody that is above a C-rated system in the first season, or a C-rated overall scout in the first system. All these C-rated guys are actually pretty good scouts. C-, it's starting to dip a little bit in quality. They're going to take a little bit longer to scout, but you definitely want to hold on to your higher overall scouts rather than your higher region efficiency scouts. That's what RE stands for. You can see it at the top there. But that is something that you definitely need to know, is that scout rating is better than region efficiency. So having an A- like Valery Samsonov here, yes, he would probably be absolutely phenomenal in the SHL. We might end up moving him there, but there's a couple different places you can place your scouts. Of course, you can view scout info by clicking down on the right stick on your controller, whether it's PlayStation or Xbox. I'm on Xbox in this case, but that is definitely something you want to pay attention to still. The region familiarity is definitely going to help with scouts efficiencies, but this also will grow a lot quicker than the scouts overall. So that is something to keep in mind when you're setting up your scouting and relocating your scouts. So once you determine who your high overall scouts are, you could actually go and sort by highest to lowest or lowest to highest. We're going to go lowest to highest here. So that means that we can go through and fire these. This is actually a fairly solid scouting system. If you play with bigger market franchises like Montreal or Chicago or teams like that, if you play with those teams, you are actually more likely to get better scouts to start with. I'm not saying you should only play with those teams. You can really do this with any team that you prefer. But the first thing you're going to want to do here is go through and fire all your low scouts. So that's really easy. You just press X, or I guess it would be square on PlayStation on the controller, and just fire out all of these guys that aren't C rated. Now the next thing to note once you've fired off all those players is you're going to want to go and hire other scouts, but before you actually hire scouts, you have to go through a little bit of a back and forth process as far as relocating scouts and then determining which regions you still need scouts in. So the first step that we're going to take in this is actually just relocating our scouts. So the first thing we're going to do here, we're going to go with our highest rated scout. Samsonov is actually the most efficient in the SHL. He's got an A+ efficiency or region accuracy. So why wouldn't we put him there? Because maybe we need an extra Russian scout. Maybe SHL scouts are really easy to find, so we can relocate him within 1 day if we need to do that. As far as Sylvain Bedard goes here, he's best actually in the USA East. So again, why wouldn't we put him there? That just makes too much sense. So let's do that. It's really quick to relocate. You just need to select the right region, select the right league, and then go from there. So it doesn't take long at all. We've got an A+ here in Dale Jeffrey. So what I recommend doing is writing out a little system. I'll put it on the screen now as far as what your scout breakdown needs to be. But this is essentially what we're thinking when we set up for this system and try to get every single amateur player scouted in the draft. The reason we don't do pro scouting as often in NHL 23, 24, even back in 22, is because X factors have begun to affect line chemistry more and more every single game. If you guys saw the last video I released, it would be talking about line chemistry and how it's essentially not useless now, but it definitely is a lot less predictable since X factors exist. So you don't really need to scout a ton of NHL players if you know they potentially have X factors. That's really all you need to know at this point. So that's why pro scouts don't really play as big of a role. So starting things off here, you can see on the screen, as I've put, you're going to need 3 scouts in the OHL. Currently, we have 1, maybe 2. We have 1. So not bad, but not a great start either. We definitely need to hire 2 more OHL scouts. Then you need 2 scouts in a whole bunch of different regions here as far as the USA Central, the WHL, the QMJHL, Liga, SHL, and Russia. All of these are bigger size leagues. They hold a lot of players, a lot of prospects that you are going to potentially be wanting to draft. And then as far as the 1 scout per region area goes, you're going to want those guys, just single scouts in the USA East, USA West, DEL, NLA, and Extraliga. So essentially just the US coasts and Europe, you're going to want less scouts there versus all the bigger leagues, you're going to want more scouts there. So as we continue to work our way through, we're going to try to relocate as many of these guys as we can. So as we can see, Bradley Baumgartner is actually very good in the USA Central or the West. We can use him in either of those regions. So I think let's start off with the Central simply because we have scouts in the other 2 regions already. And by the looks of it, we even have one scout that is in the Central already too. We'll have to figure out who that is, but once we do, that won't take very long. And let's see, it's Chucko here. He's actually best in the West as well, but we already have a scout in the West that's actually higher rated. He could be an OHL scout too. That might actually not be a bad idea to relocate Abel Pisani because he's fairly high rated as far as scouting goes. Yes, it's an A-. Obviously, you're going to want an A or A+ for region efficiency, but in this case, he's a B-rated scout or a B- rated scout. I'm not really too worried about how good he's going to do at his job. I'm more so just looking to make sure that I cover all my bases with the regions, and when we have extra guys that can actually go through, be relocated, and then we can hire a potentially higher region efficiency player or scout there, then we might as well. So let's continue on here. We're just pressing Y or triangle to relocate each scout and then going and selecting the appropriate league. So yeah, we'll throw Chucko down there, and we're continuing on slowly adding more and more players or more and more scouts to each region that we need. It does look like I'm probably going to have to fire a couple of these C-rated scouts simply because their regions just don't match to what we're really looking for. Fortunately for Dimitrios Ragopoulos, he's going to get to keep a job, and we're going to go and assign him to the queue. So you guys get the idea. You see what you need to do on this first kind of step or round for actually hiring. I'm just going to speed run through this. I'll cut it quickly, and then you guys will see that I'll have most of my scouts will either be in blue or we'll be down a couple more from 13, and then we'll have to go and hire in those opening positions. Alright guys, so looking at my current scouting, we still need to hire 10 more scouts based on the current position our scouts are in. Most of them are A+ region efficiency, which is great, and they're still, you know, holding on to their overalls pretty well too, as far as we didn't have to fire any C-rated. Well, we had to fire a couple C-rated scouts, but we'll go and hire more back. So looking at our current position, you can actually sort by region name, which definitely helps for kind of picking out what you need, where you need it. So currently we need one more OHL scout. We've covered all the QMJHL scouts. We need 2 WHL scouts. We don't have any WHL scouts currently, so that's an area where we definitely need to hire. Our USA West and East are good. We need one more USA Central scout there as well. We need one more SHO. We need one more Liga. We need one more Russian, and then we need all the European scouts. We need DEL, NLA, and Extra League. We need one of each of those scouts as well. So you have 2 options here. You can just press the start button, or I guess it would be the touchpad on PlayStation controller. You can go there. That's the quickest way to go through and hire scouts. If you need to, for some reason, find it on the menu too, it's just slower, but it's under contracts, so you can go to hire scouts as well. And then you can see, or sorry, it's hire staff. And then that makes it a little bit more tricky if you go through hire staff, because then you have to left trigger or L2 over and then click hire scouts, and then you can find all the scouts you're looking for. So I recommend starting right at the top here, going region by region, checking through the efficiencies. Like there's an A- scout there in the OHL. We don't necessarily want to hire him. And looking through, it's a lot of USA scouts more than anything, USA and some CHL. There is an A+ OHL rated scout, so we're going to go with Jacques Renaud. He's going to actually end up in the OHL rather than the Q, even though just note mentally or write it down if you need to or something, what region you want each scout in. Obviously, you can go through and adjust this once you've actually hired the scouts. As far as the money offered goes, you don't really need to adjust it too much. Usually the scouts are pretty happy with getting a job, so that is something to keep in mind as well. All right, looks like Anastasia Grachev is going to be a really good Russian hire. Maybe we bump it up by 1. It doesn't really change much, but just something to keep in mind as well, that, you know, the scouts do still like to get paid a little bit, but it's not something you need to worry about. So got an A-rated Liga scout here in Samu Helenius, something to pay attention to as well there. And we got it. This is a really, really good scout to hire. If you can hire scouts like this, you might not need to fire them if their overall grows. We'll talk about firing scouts a little bit later on because that does become a topic season to season, but as of right now, look at this guy, Mario Robichaud. He's got A's across the entire USA, so he's a very flexible scout there. And then he could potentially scout the WHL or the QMJHL as well. We're going to hire him for the purpose of scouting the USA Central, and because I value him so high with his with his flexibility and his ability to scout different regions, we're going to hire him in a little bit more. Jakub Sedlak here we're going to hire because, again, a European scout that we need. We can throw him in the NLA or Extraliga. It doesn't really matter there. As far as WHL scouts go, you know, actually Jerome Mathot isn't bad. We do need 2 WHL scouts still, so that is something to keep an eye on. We can spam through it if we want, but there's no point in doing that really. There is our DEL scout, excuse me. Even though his name is Dmitry Yakupov and he scouts Russia mainly, he's actually not the best at scouting Russia. He's an A-rated, but he's really good at scouting the DEL and the rest of the world. As far as the rest of the world goes, there's 2 leagues you don't really need to worry about. Rest of the world and Allsvenskan are only ever going to generate a few prospects after the first season. The first season, there's a couple in each of those just because there's, you know, real life prospects existing in those leagues. So you'll definitely want to pay attention to that maybe year 1, but I'm recommending you don't necessarily hire in either of those regions. All right, so the first WHL supposedly regional scout in Dominic Andrews is not looking great there, so that's something we need to find here coming up. Matthias Dolak we're going to sign for the SHL more so. And at this point, you can see in the bottom corner we've offered 7 contracts. That means we need to offer 3 more, and I believe the only 3 that we are missing on here now is 1 more. Let's see. We need 2 more WHL scouts still. We're still lacking in that area, and we need 1 more European scout. This guy looks perfect, or this, sorry, girl, Hannah Holzer, looks perfect. We will sign her because she's very, very adjustable in Europe there. And then continuing on, we're now just going to kind of start spamming through, looking for around an A rating in the WHL. We want to try to not drop below a C overall in scouts. That's kind of the lowest you should go. Year 1, it's going to be a little bit rougher because sometimes you'll have to hire like 1 C- scout or something like that. But really at this point, I'm not even looking at any other statistics. I'm literally just looking at how good is their WHL region efficiency. So Sergei Solovyov, still C rated, not bad there. You know, if you had to choose between a C rated and a C- rated scout, and let's say the C- rated scout had an A+ efficiency versus the C rated scout had an A- efficiency, I would still go with the C rated A- because, again, overall trumps region efficiency. So at that point, we are now looking at 10 contracts offered. I think we are ready to go. So now we just get to advance a couple days and then reassign all these scouts. So one more section you'll want to pay attention to as far as a pop-up you'll get throughout if you're playing owner mode is you'll get this allocate budget screen. If you're going to be sending a lot of scouts around, you're going to want to leave some scout travel on. Apart from that, I normally just bump the operation or arena operations budget as high as I can. I usually even take a little bit out of advertising and promotions just to actually afford to fix the rink, because the rink deteriorates like 100 times faster than anything else in this game. It's hilarious to watch, but that's just how it is. So, you know, keep a little bit of money for scout salary, scout travel. If you're a big organization like Chicago who has a $3.8 million scouting budget, you don't really need to worry about it too much. It's only more so if you're a smaller team that you'll want to kind of max these out more so. All right, guys, so now that I have reassigned all the scouts to the proper regions, it looks like I've got 3 SHL scouts here, so I definitely messed that up. So that means Grachev will have to go back to Russia. So yeah, every now and then you'll make an error when you're actually reassigning scouts. It's not a problem. Just leave it for the day. Literally advance 1 day on the calendar, because if you go and try to relocate these scouts again, it's just going to glitch out your whole save and it'll crash eventually. So don't even try to do that. But as you can see, we got the 2 WHL, 3 OHL, 2 QMJHL. Then we've got the 1-2-1 set up in the East, and then just 3 European scouts. It should be 2 Nordic scouts. Grachev's not going to be in there. 2 Liga scouts, and then what will be 2 Russian scouts. So now that we are all set up with that, I'm going to advance that 1 day, fix the Grachev error there. And then once we are done with that, then I'm actually going to use auto scouting as an example. We're going to auto scout through an entire season. I'm not actually going to do any scouting to start with. And we'll see how the scouting report turns out. Just to show you guys, I'm sure you've actually experienced it before and probably didn't even realize what was going on. But there is a massive difference from one season to the next as far as whether or not you do your own scouting versus if you let the AI do your scouting or the computer. So let's advance a season with the Chicago Blackhawks. You know, of course, we're trying to build around Connor Bedard because he's, you know, just generational according to everybody. So he is. I do agree that he is. I have no knocks against him. I think he's a great player. I think he's fabulous for the NHL. But yeah, we're going to try to build a little bit better of a prospect pool around him because Chicago's prospect pool, as much as everybody hypes it up, kind of isn't the best. Like, there's no bona fide superstars apart from Bedard in there. Like, yes, Korchinski's going to be good. Yes, Reichel's going to be good. Yes, Frank Nazar's going to be good. All those guys are going to be good, but he needs a couple wingmen in there still. So anyways, let's advance. That's my Connor Bedard rant for the season, but we will advance to the next season, and then I will show you guys how the scouting report looks after one full season of auto scouting. All right, guys, so a skill set I want to show you in this as well. You probably know how to do it already, but there's this thing called draft interviews, and essentially you can go in, you can ask 3 questions on any prospect you want, and as you can see here, actually it hasn't really been a bad top end for the scouting. Lots of players actually got scouted, but as you can see, like Tanner Howe being a 1-bar franchise potential, that's pretty inaccurate. Certain players get a lot of scouting when you leave auto scouting on, but for the most part, like, look at the gaps. I guess Branzig Nygaard is a Allsvenskan player, so we have no scouts there. But with the auto scouting, it's not horrendously bad, but it's not particularly great either. You really get left guessing on the majority of players. Certain players, it'll give you a full bar scouting report, like a guy like Setzinger, sure. All right, he looks good, but like most of these players, you just are guessing on. You don't really have any idea how good or bad they're going to be. I would bet that a guy like Grossman's probably a low top 4, if not low elite at that range, but for the most part, you're left guessing. The more you play this game and leave scouting reports like this, the better your guessing will get, but it's not the way to go because then you just don't know if you're guaranteed picks or not. You usually end up wasting a lot of draft picks this way. So I'll go through, show you guys what it looks like with me just blind drafting. Not blind drafting, but like essentially blind drafting. Because yes, there are some good players in here, but for the most part, a lot of these guys aren't going to be very good, and we have no idea what their actual potentials are, and we can't really find draft steals with an auto scouting method like this. So that is kind of my entire wrap on auto scouting. It's not the way to go, and I'm going to show you guys a method here in just a second that will make it so that you uncover pretty much 200 plus players that have full bar potential that looks like this, as far as you can see just every single thing about a guy like Macklin Celebrini or Cole Iserman or so on. Like that's what you want to see essentially. So we'll keep an eye on that. I do think we're actually going to draft a guy like Gordon Fitzgerald because he is a gem. And if you guys don't know, gem status players tend to grow quicker, have better seasons, do things like that. So keep an eye on gems that you find in your draft class because gems really do help with your team's overall kind of performance standings and just overall success eventually. So keep that in mind when you're drafting. So I'll jump into the draft here quickly. I'm not really going to like highlight it or anything, but I'll just show you guys my picks, show you where kind of everything ends up, and then show you just how inaccurate my drafting is because my scouting failed to report properly. Alright, so when you jump into the draft as well, guys, something I just want to point out quickly is that anytime you see a little green arrow like this is going to help with knowing which teams want to trade their picks and which teams do not. If you're trying to trade up in the draft to the top 5, unless a team like Washington has jumped way up and for some reason doesn't want the top pick, usually they will have a little green arrow beside it. Most of the time though, this just indicates that a team has a pick on their block. Alright guys, so I'll see you back at the start of the next season where we'll jump through more scouting. We'll actually lay out the day-by-day details of what you need to do to set up a fully scouted draft class. Alright guys, so we are into the 3rd season now. You can see the Blackhawks definitely improved over the off-season a little bit. the team just grew a lot. Like this Fitzgerald guy we drafted in the first year has turned out really, really good. But regardless of that, we're going to get back into drafting here in just a second. Other players have developed nicely. We signed Brett Burns, like a couple things like that. But anyways, getting back to the scouting, where we kind of need to stay focused on, and there are a couple pointers I need to give you guys. First things first, we're going to start off with the step-by-step process here that I will display on the screen right now, and it is how to scout essentially 200 full bar, fully revealed players in the draft class. So now that we have our scouts here, you can see it's a very solid looking scouting system. If we go to higher scouts, sometimes there's better scouts, sometimes there isn't. You can sometimes find more B-, B-rated, even A-rated scouts. If you look just at the start of free agency, that's usually when those guys pop up. But as you can see on the screen that I'm posting right now, this is the system that we are going to use to try and uncover all these players. So the first step is we're going to scout play styles for every region, as many players as we can in the top 200 until September 30th approximately. If you go over that date, it's not a problem. So what you're going to want to do is go into your menu here, sort by clicking the left stick, and then go region by region and just scout as many players as you can up to that date. And we're going to be using play style. The second set, as you can see on screen, will be strengths and weaknesses, then skill assessment, and then potential comparison for 2. The reason we don't do character assessment in this process is because character still pops up with potential comparison usually, as well as if you're not using morale, it absolutely does not matter. So let's get into it. I'll show you guys what your screen should look like in your scouting menu before you actually simulate in advance. I'll show you a couple tips in for the calendar management, and then we'll just go back and forth the 5 times, and then I'll show you guys what a fully scouted draft class is going to look like. So all you have to do is press on a player. You'll see it'll give the options once you're actually in. Sorry, let me just back out once here. You'll press A, you'll go over to scout specific players. You don't need to worry about find prospects. That does not matter. Finding prospects, if we click on it, gives you, I don't even know the point of this, because when you think about it, you know all the prospects that are available on the board already. They're all there. You don't have to worry about it as far as finding new prospects. It's not like FIFA or some other sports games that EA releases where you actually have to go out and find these prospects. All the prospects are here already. So then we're going to do the same thing. Press A again, or it's going to be X and X on PlayStation controller, and then we're just going to kind of spam our way through it until you can see down at the bottom there, we get to the date of, well, in this case, we're going to do October 1st rather than September 30th. It's within 1 day. And then we will just make a note, a mental note here saying Ilya Morozov is the guy that we stopped on, so we need to scout Nikita Vorobev next. So then you want to press the start button or the D-pad on the PlayStation controller, and we'll do it one more time here just to show you guys properly. And again, just doing playstyle for now. So you spam your way through, get to the desired date, and hopefully you get all of the players scouted. Sometimes you don't. Like you can see here, we're just outside. We're going to miss like 203 there on Coruscant. He might move up throughout the year. We'll see. But then again, just make sure you don't hit back. If you hit back in this menu, it doesn't save anything. I'll do a quick example here of what happens if you just hit B after like spamming through. So I'll do a couple of these, and then we go, oh no, I hit B. And then look in the menu there. No data to display at this time. You don't want to do that. You want to have this kind of setup looking with playstyles. Don't make that error, because it sucks when you simulate ahead on the calendar and then go, oh great, my scout didn't actually scout anything because I forgot to save it. So don't make that error. That's a fairly common error. I've made that error like thousands of times. It's quite frustrating usually, so just don't do that. Make sure you hit the right button at the end there. But as you can see, we're just finishing up scouting our way through these players, and we're going to get a lot of players in the Liga region. That's actually way more than we need to, so maybe we're going to have to reassign a scout here. That's something to pay attention to as well. You don't need to scout the top 300 players in a region. You need to scout about the top 200, maybe 250. So I'll be back with you guys just to show you how the entire menu looks when it's fully filled out, and then we'll jump into the calendar and I will point out those tips. So as you guys can see, we've only scouted up to prospect number 157 this year in what is the QMJHL. So something you're going to want to do is relocate scouts based on your team needs. So this year, yes, we probably need 3 scouts in the OHL as well, but at the same time, if I'm making it all the way to the, let's see, if I'm making it all the way to like 200-ish with my set date with just 2 scouts, you don't need to use a third in the OHL. You can relocate and use that scout as your kind of like variable or X factor kind of scout. That's what I would call them. They're your, probably what you want to do is make them one of your most versatile scouts so you can just move them around. So if you can do that with your A-rated scout, that's actually a really good strategy. And as you can see, we get up to 310 on the prospect number, 311 on the prospect number. So I am unfortunately going to have to wait just one day here with Jacques Renaud to actually get him relocated to the Q, because I had already relocated him to the O, which was not actually my smartest move, but that's okay, it happens, and it's really not a big deal if you're one day later on a scouting report per se. It does matter if you're setting dates to simulate up to, though. That's where you don't want to kind of go over the date. So let's see, where did we scout up to? Looks like Zizekas, all right. And even, you know what, I'm going to say the WHL could also potentially use an extra scout because we're only up to 175. 175 is better than 175 is better than 157, so we will put Renaud back in the queue in a day. And I do believe, because I was distracted and talking, that I think I actually missed. Did I? I think I might have missed one singular scouting report here apart from Renaud. Maybe? No. Okay, so it's just Renaud. So this is what the screen should look like apart from Renaud. We're going to just don't think about him there. But all your dates should be October 1st or September 30th or whatever day you set, or before that. So like you can see, we have one September 26th date there. That's not a big deal because that's going to be done beforehand, before we actually finish simulating up to October 1st. But at the current date with September 13th, 14th, around there, what we are going to make sure we do not do, because I just did this in Season 2, I'm realizing I actually did. Oh, Jacques Renaud set. So you see, I accidentally left auto scouting on and it immediately set Renaud to a potential and comparison setup. So now I have to go through and delete all of these prospects that he actually scouted. And then I have to go back and relocate him and then change his scouting report. It's a very fun thing to do. So we will relocate him to the queue and then get scouting on that. So if we look at our current scouting reports, I was actually pretty close with that. We need to go Lapierre on, and if we continue on from Lapierre, we're going to get to about 240, 250, so that's perfect. So just be careful if you do forget to set a scouting report and you have auto scouting on like I did, because I was simulating through another season nice and quickly and didn't really care about scouting so much. Just make sure that you check your scouts. That's what I would say. If you are for some reason leaving auto scouting on, don't do it, first off. And second off, just don't even worry about that. So now that we are set up with the scouts, we can then simulate up to our date of October 1st. I'm actually just going to save this file because I had an error in Season 2 where I accidentally hit sim to next season, because that's always what I do, and that is the wrong method. So now that we have our scouting report set up, we can simulate up to the date, and we want to go just to October. Don't go, it's literally like the second day of preseason. Don't go any further than that, because play styles are extremely quick. You don't need to take a lot of time to scout play styles. That's why it's such a short time frame in here. You'll see, yeah, we're 4 games into preseason and the Blackhawks are rolling. But it doesn't matter as far as that goes. What we're going to now do, that we've set up the initial scouting report and gotten all of our scouts back. It'll say if there are any scouts out. Up at the top, it currently says that there are none. So what we are looking for now is to go to approximately November 11th. I'll show that on the screen again just so you guys can take screenshots of it or whatever. Set your dates, and then this time, again, you know, sort by region to make it easier on yourself. Go to scout specific players, and then this time, let's do a skills assessment. Or sorry, not skills assessment, a strengths and weakness report. So again, you're going to spam through. This time we're going to aim for the middle of November. So it looks like the November 13th is kind of the date that we're hitting there. If we're going 12 or 13 prospects, if you try to divide in half here, you can count. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, and that's very close to the middle of all the prospects we scouted so far. You can tell if you've scouted a prospect or not based on the scout rank here. The scout actually tells you where they think the player should be ranked versus where the central scouting ranks them. And that's how you can kind of work with what you figure out. So that's why I write approximately in here. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if you can aim for close to that date, you're not going to struggle. So I do believe, yeah, Vorobyev and Sharov were the two guys. So we're doing strengths and weakness this time. And again, it's just a rinse and repeat, spammy kind of process. It really isn't, it's not entertaining necessarily, but if you do it properly, you're going to have a great draft class to look at every single year, because you're going to be able to find those steals and you're going to be able to just cheat the system fairly, essentially, is what I would say you're doing with scouting. If other teams aren't scouting this thoroughly, too bad for them. They get to miss out on prospects that you're able to find in later rounds and turn into just absolute studs eventually. So that is the goal with this system. That's what you're trying to do. And yeah, I'll be back with you guys when we start doing the next little setup, and yeah, it's just going to be cut really quickly through here. All right, so here's how the strengths and weaknesses assessment should look on your scouting report when you're ready to go. Again, we're aiming for, in this case, November 13th, so 2 days off of the approximated date that I give you guys on this template, but your draft class is going to look a little bit more awkward than you're used to seeing if you use auto scouting or just potential and comparison or things like that. It's really just going to be a big old player type setup, and that's really it. Everything else you look at and you go, okay, there's not a lot of info on players right now, and that is absolutely how it should look. There's really just their stats, and that's it. Like, nothing else should really be on here yet after your first round of player styles or play styles, and then after strengths and weaknesses, you'll get strengths and weaknesses and start to develop a bit more of a profile on these players. So don't press any buttons on quick links, because that will be a problem. Instead, what you want to do is use your calendar again. Just use your calendar every time. And the cat's making an appearance. All right, so as we move forward here a little bit further, we're going to go up to, again, November 13th. That was the date we set, so that's the game against the LA Kings here for Chicago in this case. But let's just continue on, see how it goes. Again, not really worried about any of that until we get to the date. All right, so now that we are at the date of November 13th there, our scouting should all be done. And if we go back into the scouting menu and look again at this point, there should be no scouting reports. I think this is what, yeah, currently scouting, they should all say no. Sorry, that's what you're looking for here on the menu. You can also, if you keep going over, you can see contract year, salary, age, things like that. So you can see who your oldest scout is. So that would be Renaud, and Samsonov is our youngest at 34. So yeah, very helpful information potentially if you need it. But at this point, we're now doing the third stage of the scouting the prospects, and we're starting to build out a profile. As you can see, we now have strengths and weaknesses and the play style along with the stats and rankings. So this time we're going to do a skills assessment, and as the date and template shows here, we're going up to approximately the end of January 25th or so for the skills assessment. Skills assessment and potential and comparisons both take a little bit longer in time, but you're going to want to try to get as many of these as you can. We're going to go up to January 24th. By the looks of it, maybe 25th again. If certain scouts go up to the 25th, 26th, then that is all good. Within a couple days anyways, right? That's what you're working with. So again, just spamming skills assessment doesn't really take a whole lot of skill, just takes a rinse and repeat process. And yeah, it might seem boring at times, but do it. Trust me. Just trust the process here, guys. One other tip I did want to add here, guys, as well, is if you think you need to adjust your scouting systems from a year-to-year basis as far as firing scouts and hiring scouts based on your regional needs and just overall world global needs for scouting. Like, let's say my Nordic scouts, I have 4 of them over there, 2 in Liga, 2 in the SHL, and my scouts are getting up to the 190, almost 200 mark to start with just one scout doing most of these scouting reports. If you feel like you need more scouts in a different region, feel free to move your scouts around to hire new scouts, fire off other scouts that you don't need. Just fit your own needs from a year-to-year basis. It doesn't have to be perfect, but this is giving you the base knowledge and the template to work with to set yourself up for success for scouting. So, as you can see, certain regions like the Extra Liga there, I'm only going to January 5th rather than January 23rd. Reason being, I just don't have enough prospects to scout in that region, but I still want to cover the guys that are in like the 40-50 range kind of area, because it just makes more sense to do that when maybe those guys are going to be your elite players in the draft. You just never know from a year-to-year basis. So one more thing to keep in mind when we're working through this process, and you're probably sitting here getting mentally fatigued going, why am I doing this? This is such a waste of time. It's so much extra scouting. I could just be doing potential and comparison 2 or 3 times throughout the year, and it would give me the full report that I need on most of the players. Just trust the process, because when you think about it from your scout's perspective, your scouts are going through and building out a player profile on every single player in the top 200 throughout the year by doing this method. If you're doing it the other way, sure, some of the scouts, maybe they're going and watching. Let's say we're looking back at 2023. Let's say, of course, all the scouts are going to know that Connor Bedard is a generational player and that he's, without a doubt, the consensus #1 pick, and that he's got franchise potential, and that he's a sniper, and that this is his strengths, this is his weaknesses, all that stuff. Of course, every single scout is going to know that. Every single scout and every single person that watches hockey is going to know that. But it's more helping out your scouts build out the profile on the guys that are lower down in the draft from the 50 to 150 kind of range, or even closer to 200. That's what this method is designed to do, is to build out every single piece of the player profile so that once you actually get to potential and comparison, it doesn't take 2.5 or 3 months to scout 12 players on potential and comparison. Instead, you're going to be able to scout 24 players in the span of about 1.5 months, maybe 2 months at most, with potential and comparison. And the key with that is that then you can really narrow down the players that, you know, like maybe your 2 or 3 bar elites that you're like, okay, I'm on the fence about them. They could be a top 6 forward, or they could be a medium elite forward. Like, there's big differences there between those two potentials. So you guys just really need to stick, if you want to do this properly, you need to stick to every single date on this process, and then it is going to actually click at the end, and you're going to be amazed as to how it works. So as you can see, we're falling a little bit short yet again in the WHL, but that's okay, because again, you're not always going to get it completely perfect. It's going to be close every time. That's that 99% kind of marker. But now our skills assessment is done. My rant is done on that, and let's get to the next date of January 24th here by the looks of it. That seems to be, I think I did a 27th here. So again, that's why we double check, go through, just cut out one singular player here, maybe be like, okay, well, Boyce we don't necessarily need. It takes an extra 5 days to do that, and really it's not necessarily the end of the world if we don't have one of those guys scouted. Not only that, but because I've got 3 scouts, I can actually go in, make sure Boyce is scouted, and then a guy down at the 300 range isn't, right? Like that's the difference. That's the quick little attentions to detail and fixing it up and tweaking it just every single time you go through the report. And okay, January 24th is the date now. All right, guys, so we are up to the date now of January. We're up to the 26th. I accidentally hit advanced day by accident, but that is all good. So Now that we've done that, now we get to do the fun part, which is potential and comparison. But something you also need to just pay attention to when you are going through prospect by prospect here is to see, if you look on the right side of the screen, you can see how there's a 2-bar summary and attributes there. If you see any players at all when you're scouting through here, if you see any players at all that have more than 2 bars, so there's one, there's an example of one, Viktor Zadorov, we don't need to scout him. There's just absolutely no reason for that. He's there's not very many usually in the top 200 that actually fall out that way or have been scouted in previous years or anything like that. You don't necessarily need to do a potential comparison on them. You probably do, but it's not necessarily required. Some of these guys, you can see, we got a medium backup here and Marco Oliwa, or Olawa, however you say his name. We don't need to scout him. There's no reason. He's in the NLA, and that saves us from doing a potential comparison process on him. It's just not necessary. And as you can see, personality doesn't necessarily come up. So yes, we could do a personality report on him, but again, that's probably not necessary for a medium backup goalie we're probably not going to draft. All right, so in our third round of scouting here, again, rinse and repeat, nothing really special to it at all. All you got to do is just go up until May 15th, approximately. All right, guys, so we make it up to the date of May 17th that we set there. Doesn't take very long to simulate. I mean, that is probably the longest portion of simulation that you're going to have to do throughout this scouting process. It takes quite a while, but now I want to show you guys just how to go through with a fine-tooth comb and kind of find the last prospects that you want to scout, that you need to scout. You have to narrow this down at this point, because if we go in region by region and scout certain prospects, you can see most of these guys are fully scouted, full bar. They know their position, they know their potential, like it is there. It is ready to go. The only way that you are going to have to look and find something, or the only way that you are going to be able to identify that a player might need more scouting, is by looking in, and here you can see your scout rank gives them a 3-bar rather than a 4. It's not always guaranteed. Sometimes they still have the full potential and then you're good to go. Doesn't really matter at that point, but check all of these players. Like you can see here, Ilya Morozov is only 2 out of 4 bars. He's a guy we want to scout still. Most of these guys you don't really have to worry about. Most of them are set up, ready to go. They have the full scouting report pretty much. And yeah, there's only a few that you'll actually want to kind of work your way through, figure out, okay, I don't know the potential on that guy, I don't know the potential on this guy, let's go through, check them out one more time. And you can see we're up to June 15th with just 3 players here at this point now, but most of these guys are scouted already too. So there's a guy, Dmitry Tikhonov, didn't even get scouted properly. I might have just full on missed him, and that takes us up to June 25th. So I'm actually going to take Tikhonov and stick him on the next scouting report, and that's just 3 players. So really, there's not a lot of players that you actually are going to be able to scout on this last round of scouting. But it's look at this find: Vyacheslav Medvedov, 2-year ETA, low elite, like he's almost NHL ready, simply based on his shooting, puck skills, and senses. Now he is a 2-way defenseman, obviously. E-rated skating is pretty bad, so that's going to be an area he needs to improve on. But at the same time, why wouldn't you draft a guy at that position? Like, that just makes so much sense to do. So yeah, every now and then you'll have guys that you just either miss or that just didn't get scouted properly to start with, so you'll have to go through and do it again. And as you can see, like, these guys all didn't quite get scouted. They got missed on the last potential comparison, but we're still up to 170, 194 in that range. So again, go up to, I believe it's June 22nd. If you go to June 23rd, you might not get all of the potentials done, but it's pretty darn close. So that's the way to go through it with the fine-tooth comb at the end. It's your last real step of this process, and then I will show you guys the entire draft class once it's ready. Let's see, is there anybody that actually isn't fully scouted in here? Like, this is actually really good. Look at that. Medium elite, 132, Chris Mallet, looks great. Now, there is some guys in here that do need it. There's not a lot. it really actually becomes almost like a perfectionist or like OCD kind of thing if you pay attention to it long enough. You get committed to it, you put a bunch of time into it, and then it's like, oh, I want to know all these players' potentials before the draft so I can trade up and I can make moves at the draft or just beforehand, and then make sure that I get all the prospects my team wants and needs, and then you don't have to pay an arm and a leg for it with other top prospects and players like that. It really does make, it gives you the full advantage in franchise mode in the long run anyways. Over 25 seasons, if you're doing this well for 23, 24 seasons, like that is going to be a massive difference as far as how your franchise performs versus the next franchise. So yeah, you can see there's a couple players in here that just didn't get scouted properly. And that last guy we're not going to do. We're going to go up to June 20th with that report. And yeah, you can see how it works. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. And then once we get to the draft, I will show you guys how the draft class is looking, because obviously right now there are still a few players missing here and there that we want to get the full potential on still. So just going through here a little bit further, guys, and you want to talk about draft steals, look at this goalie. 84 to 90 overall, somewhere in that range, 16 wins, 6'2", 198, very solidly built goalie, but look at that potential. You're not going to find that potential most of the time. You're going to luck out if you find that potential without this method. But Will Tamura is definitely going to be a goalie that the Montreal Canadiens, that the Chicago Blackhawks pursue, especially when he's fully scouted like that. Like that is just, this is why you got to love this method. Look at this, 2-year ETA on a fringe starter as well. That's another guy that you could probably very easily go for and acquire with very minimal cost associated with that acquisition and that draft pick. And it is just so easy to do as far as just staying consistent, making sure you don't over scout players that you don't need. And then of course, if you have gems that are like sitting there partially completed with scouting, why not figure out exactly what type of player they are? Like that just makes it so much easier on you. Now, don't go over June 22nd because June 22nd is the draft day. If you go further than that, it doesn't, you don't get your scouting report in time essentially. So unfortunately, the one region I didn't really get to scout much simply because my scouts were just, I didn't have enough scouts in that region, was the WHL this year. But looking back, and this is exactly how your last round of prospect scouting should go before the draft. You should be going up to June 22nd or before that date, and really just pick out as many prospects as you can, but it's usually going to be anywhere between 3 and 5 prospects that you actually get to scout in this time frame because it's a very short time frame. So guys, now that we are up to draft interview day, which is June 22nd, let's take a look at the draft class. And first off, amazing scouting in the top end. That's usually what you would get from a that's what you would get from an auto scout as well, but look at this. We keep going, and just every single player has got full bar potential. You know exactly where they are, exactly who they are. Look at these picks. Dylan Michalski and Xavier Roy, 2 very good players. Look at that. Vincent St. Pierre, amazing gem-rated sniper. That's a guy you definitely want to go for. Very solid prospects throughout that middle part of the second round, or even early part of the second round. As we continue on, there's our first guy that we didn't scout, Morgan Brookbank. Of course, he's in the Ice League. Maybe he's going to be fabulous, but you know, you can write those players' names down and keep track of them. Look at this guy though, Will Tamura. I pointed him out earlier, but man, oh man, high elite goalie at 87 in the draft. That's amazing. Of course, you can also sort by potential, which makes it a little bit quicker. And then you can pin out the players that you actually want to draft. Of course, there's like 4 elite goalies in here that are all look amazing. But as you work your way down, oh, look at that. I need right wingers for my team. Perfect. We'll go out and get Xavier Roy or Xavier Roy and Jonathan Haley. And then, you know, get a couple other guys that we can too. Of course, why wouldn't we? They're all available and they're all there. Another thing I recommend you guys do quickly before you actually jump into the draft is go through and look for any players that are past the 100 mark, essentially, for medium top 6 forwards and medium top 4 defensemen. If you go and do that, you will usually find at least a couple steals where you look at them and go, okay, that guy's probably worth drafting. He's laid enough back in the draft, and he's got that medium top 4 or medium top 6 potential that it wouldn't hurt to go out and get him. Same thing with starters too. Starting goalies sometimes can be really, really good too. They can grow right up to like 90 overall by the time they're 27, 28 years old. And yeah, it's just like, don't exploit this system, but use it to your advantage. And like even top 9 forwards, look at this, like a guy at 201, enforcer Bruce Jovanovski, 6'6", 245. Why wouldn't you draft that guy with your 6th round pick, right? Like he is a monster, honestly. So yeah, there's options like that that just make it really fun to actually go and use this method properly. The funny thing with this draft too is you'd look at it and go, oh, there's not a goalie rated above what, like 87? Oh, it must be a bad draft class for goalies. No, it's not. There's at least 4 elite goalies in this draft. Why wouldn't you do the scouting properly and find those guys, right? That's just the methodology behind it here. So once you actually find players, obviously go and pin them out. Use the pin option. It's just the X button or square button on your controller. And then go and rank these guys number by number through your team and then draft accordingly, right? Like I'm playing as Chicago. We are in year 3 at this point, so 2025-26. The team's pretty solid. They're not bad, and we didn't lose a lot of games, so we don't have a lottery pick by any means, but we can still and go have potentially the best draft class out of, or the best draft picks out of the entire draft class from any team because we did our scouting properly. And then, of course, I plan out my picks. I trade for picks around the 40-ish mark because there's 3 really good players there in like Michalski, Waugh, and St. Pierre, and then we get all 3 of those prospects and our team just gets that much better from it. All right, so I've narrowed my list down to 9 prospects here at this point. We're going to whip through the draft really quick now because I know exactly who I want to get. I don't need to waste assets or lose assets trading up in the draft. We can keep our team competitive while still landing some picks that are going to be really good and just essentially make this team better in the long run and for the future. So looking at the team, obviously, you know, you look at that top end of the team. Yes, we got Mikko Rantanen through free agency, but overall, lots of good names. I was able to land quite a few steals still from last year in La Liberte and these like 4 other elite guys. They're not actually that crazy good. Like some of them I would honestly consider trading away probably a guy like Uldrich Kochi, however you say his name, or yeah, that's what I'm going to say is Kochi. He would make sense to trade away because he hasn't really developed, hasn't really gotten any better. Same with a guy like Oleg Mikhanov potentially that I was able to land last year. But really, I messed up the scouting last year, and I'm making sure you guys don't mess it up like I did the year before, where you just, you know, mindlessly hit sim to preseason and miss your dates on the calendar. So don't miss your dates on the calendar. That's what I'm saying. But if we look at where our team's picks land now, you can just kind of quickly go through, go into the trade section, and then map out where your picks currently land, where you need them to land, and who you're going to draft with each pick, essentially. Looking at where our current picks fall, I don't really need our 1st round pick in this draft, but if we go through, I need picks just into the 2nd round. By the looks of it, Anaheim's got a couple. Philadelphia maybe has a couple. So that's the way to do it. Yes, you can go and trade pick for pick, number by number if you want, but it's kind of tedious doing it that way. This way you can at least put trade packages together, so I could go and get 34 and 41 from the Ducks in exchange for probably some fairly low assets. Like I could trade my 2026 22nd overall pick that I don't really need. Wayne Gronowski actually grew quite nicely. You guys probably saw me draft him in the first little bit of the video there, but really, we can go and trade away a mid-tier prospect to even like low-tier prospect here in a trade like this and not really be concerned about it. Or we can trade away contracts that we don't necessarily need. We could trade guys like, you know, Athanasiou or maybe Taylor Radish. Like there's options as to how you manage this, how you deal with it, and usually you don't end up costing yourself nearly as much by using these methods. So yeah, you can see Grossman's probably enough to get this deal through. Let's see if it does go through. It doesn't, even though it's quite close to fair value. Okay, so we have to go up just a little bit from Grossman, which, you know, isn't really a problem either. We could do Athanasiou, and that would be probably enough to get the deal done. And it is indeed. All right, so we get 2 picks there in 35 and what was, I believe, 41. Yes. So another trick I will give to you guys is use picks that are about 5 to 10 picks ahead of where the prospect is ranked. That way you will never actually have teams kind of yoink a player out one pick before they were projected. That always hurts. It happens fairly often too, so don't be fooled by like, oh, that high elite goalie's ranked at 87, I'll make sure to get pick 85 and draft him there. No, get pick 80 because he's high elite. He's probably going to go a little bit earlier, and you don't want to make that error and lose out on a high elite goalie, essentially. Look at this guy. Maxim Ovechkin looks like Ovi playing center, essentially. He's huge. Jesus, Philadelphia. All right, that's going to be fun to deal with in the future. But anyways, besides the point. So now I need one more pick in this top end of the draft. I'm thinking maybe Calgary. Yeah, we could try to trade with Calgary here. So I just want to pick before 41, essentially, because I have 35 and 41, and one of my prospects lands. My second prospect on the list lands at 41, so I want to pick a few picks ahead of there. Usually in the second round, it's not too likely that players fluctuate by like 10-ish picks around there. I am also going to grab pick 166 and use that as my 200th-ish pick around there. And in exchange, we'll just send away our 7th rounder. Apparently, teams want Ren Gronowski. I mean, I would want Ren Gronowski if I was other teams. He looks like a fabulous goalie. I think we're going to hold on to him just for a little bit longer, see if we can get a little bit more trade value out of it. And that's an overpayment with Kochi. So what we're going to do instead is go with maybe Taylor Radish, honestly. I threw a bit of a big contract his way. He is actually a really good winger, so maybe not. What about Matt Zuccarello? Is that enough? No, probably not. Well, what if we went Zuccarello and a second, maybe? That's what I'm thinking. Send a second away. Not this year, or not next year, but the year after. And click, there you go. Easy enough trade. Doesn't cost you much. And really, I'm going to be absolutely greedy here because I saw another prospect that I wanted, that I need on the right wing more so than anywhere. And he's a playmaker, which is perfect because I got Bedard as a sniper. That other guy, I'm totally blanking on his name right now. Not Wayne Gronowski. He's our two-way forward, and now I gotta go look at his name. What's his name? Fitzgerald, sorry. Yeah, so we got Fitzgerald on the left wing as a very, very solid two-way forward. We just need a playmaker to complete that line for the future. So why wouldn't I go and use some of my assets as well? This is another strategy, guys. Trading up in assets when it's necessary, or when you see a piece that you think is like, oh, that would just be perfect to fit together with my current line, with my current defensive pairing, whatever it is, right? And this guy looks really, really good too. So Serge Duclair is going to fall at where? Pick 5, pick 6, somewhere around there. So I'm going to try to trade up to pick 5 with the LA Kings. Gavin McKenna looks actually fabulous. I'm very happy with how he's turning out too, because if he's supposed to go number 1, 80 rated high elite at number 1, usually Maxim Ovechkin isn't going to get generated into this draft, but I'm actually quite happy with how that has looked too. So, you know, I could have traded up number 36 there instead of number 38. Doesn't really make much of a difference, but what you can do instead is play to your strengths. So you go, okay, I've got these 2 prospects that are good. They got great potential, but are they going to be ready in the next 2 to 3 years? Probably not. They're probably looking at a 4 to 5 year ETA. Yes, it's probably overpayment, but it's the 5th overall pick as well. You're getting an NHL ready player out of it. Is it overpayment? Absolutely. Is it worth it? Absolutely. But look at that, bit low. They don't even take it. That's crazy. Okay, so in that scenario, what if I take away that guy and go with the goalie instead? Is that better? Is that worse? Not sufficient at all. All right, so we're probably trading away 3 pretty big name prospects here to get a very solid prospect still. But it is, you know, we're probably making LA a little bit stronger by doing that, as far as they are going to be good in the future. That's a big trade for the 5th overall pick. But you know what? I'm okay with that. I want to declare that badly, that I'm willing to give up some very solid prospects in exchange. So Flynn will go 3, Rubric will go 4. Rubric looks really good too. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to spam through the draft nice and quick. We're going to grab Serge Duclair and then continue on. Oh man, 81 rated too. That's extremely nice. All right. Look out, NHL, here we come. All right, so now guys, watch the magic happen. It's going to happen pretty quickly in front of your eyes here. We're just going to go bang, bang, bang and kind of lay out all our picks. Not really struggle too much because I've laid out all my picks accordingly as to where I'm expecting to draft them. So Wah goes there. Look at that. Look at that. That's perfect. Absolutely perfect. Vincent St. Pierre, 62 rated. Great. All right. Pick 55, we're going way the hell off the board on this one. And you guys will understand in just a second because I'm not risking Will Tomorrow. I want a high elite goalie. Sure, he's 48 rated. Who cares? He's going to be a cornerstone piece of this franchise more than likely. Yes, I got Gabriel Daigle last year, who is also a high elite goalie. But we know the whole draft class. You don't even have to like spam through and look at it because you know where every player is going to fall. You know where the players you want are going to fall. And it becomes so freaking easy. All right, so Dmitriev's going here at, what are we, 86? Perfect. 49 rated, but, you know, very solid top 6 forward there still as a two-way forward. And then we got these side-by-side picks, 117, 118. And again, I don't have to worry. Why? Because Medvedov and Saget, sorry, not Medvedov, Haley and Medvedov are going to get picked 1-2, just like that. And it's super easy. I could go with Svoboda. I don't really need goalies. So, yeah, nice and easy. How good is Medvedov? Look at that. 69 rated in the 4th round. You guys aren't going to come across that all that often, so take it in while you can because, man, oh man, that Tikhonov guy was pretty good. Jake O'Sullivan is an elite, which we kind of expected. I'm looking for that fringe goalie that just looked like ridiculously good as well. I don't know where he is, but he's probably going to be about 70 or 71 rated. And yeah, I'm sorry, we just gotta bask in the glory of the 1-star skating Vyacheslav Medvedov there for a second. Ziuk was good, Malay was good, Svoboda was good. Like, it's just good prospects all the way through. All right, Saget goes at 150 because we're picking 30 picks off the board, and I don't even care. I just want to get my elite players in where I can. And that is about as easy as you can make it here. So there you go. Bruce Jovanovski going to be the last pick. He's 52 rated, 6'6" enforcer. That's not bad at all. All right, so let's sim to round 7. We don't have any more picks because we traded them away. But look at what's left. Like, maybe Louis Bonnet's going to be really good. Maybe one of these guys is going to be really good. You could grab some low top 6 players. I don't recommend that because the low potentials don't usually turn out nearly as well. I do just wonder, did the fringe starter in here that has the really good overall rating, did he get picked yet? I guess he did. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, you know, miss out on some prospects, but that is it for the draft, guys. So if this video helped you out at all, then of course show your support down below. Let's see if this Bonnet guy, oh, that Bonnet guy was a low elite, so missed one there. Could have been a good late 7th round steal, but LA got him instead, and that is all good. Actually, no, it wasn't our pick. I was like, what are the odds that was our pick? That would have been really funny. So we're gonna wrap up the draft. We're gonna just jump into the off season quickly after this, and I will show you guys when the time to get new scouts is. All right, so you'll see we have a whole bunch of scouts expiring on contracts. You can see here or at the bottom if you are too lazy to scroll over. You can see here there's a big re-sign scout button there with A at the bottom. Super easy to acknowledge if you're paying attention to it. If you just don't want to do that, you can scroll over like I do. This is normally what I do. Then I can see, I'm like, okay, I got 3 there, 2 there. I got to get all those scouts, and then I think that's it. I think I only had 5 expiring, but again, you can just scroll down quickly and check. It's like, all right, those are all good to go. You can check how many years left on those guys. Be like, all right, most of them are 2, most of them are actually 1. But yeah, super easy there as well, checking your scouts. Make sure you do it. And then, let's see. So yeah, there's no hire staff button here yet, but as soon as you see the hire staff button pop up after your re-sign phase, that's when you're going to want to sign your scouts. All right, so we're moving on to things to know after the draft. And once you're into the re-sign phase here, you definitely need to know that CHL prospects, so guys like César Laliberte or Serge Duclair, both playing in the QMJHL, right? That's exactly where they've been for the last couple of seasons. You can check by actually going in and viewing their stats by pressing A or X on PlayStation, and you can see if they're playing in the CHL anywhere, so that's WHL, QMJHL, and OHL, if players are playing there, they will not sign a contract and then go down to the AHL until they are 20 years old. If they sign their entry-level contract, it means they either play in the NHL or the CHL. If they play more than 10 games, you burn a year on their ELC. You don't want to do that. So if you have a 79, 78, even 77 rated player that's from the CHL anywhere, do not make the mistake of signing them and then thinking they're going to go to the AHL. So in the case of César Laliberte and Serge Duclair, I'm signing them because I know they are going to play in the NHL this upcoming year. For guys like Adam Jurasek, who was playing in Extraliga the year before that, or for the last 2 years essentially, and a guy like Anton Silyev, who was playing in Russia in his draft year, those guys, so all the European, Nordic, Russian, and even USA prospects, so even a guy like, where is he? Got to go down a little further, but even a guy here like Jameson Bullerice, I always think I'm saying bowl of rice, but Bullerice, you could see played in the USA League, and then we signed him, and he came up and played in Rockford, and he was 19 this last season. That's perfect because, you know, he gets a lot of growth time, he grows by a couple ratings, and gets some actually good play time. So keep that in mind when you're signing your prospects because you don't want to mess that thing up. Otherwise, you might potentially burn a year of their contract, and it's just useless to sign them if they're not going to play. So a guy like Gabriel Daigle, great option here. QMJHL, got an extra year, got 5 more shutouts, 39 wins, got a few more games, and he actually grew by 3 overall from when I drafted him. He was initially a 76 out of the draft on this roster. And yeah, very, very good player there. But I let him develop without actually having to do anything in the off season. So that's always a good method, is just sit back, watch the prospect grow. You know, if you get halfway through the season, you check your progress reports and you go, oh, this player's not growing. Oh, that player's not growing. Check their ice time, check their points production. It's okay to leave players in the European, Nordic, Russian, and USA leagues if you think it's more fitting for them. If they're under about 70 to 72 overall, I would recommend leaving them in those leagues because they'll get more ice time than in the AHL. Unless you want to heavily manage your AHL roster, usually those guys will get pushed down to the bottom 6 of your AHL roster, if not play at all as well. That is an option. So don't make that mistake of signing players over there like 67, 66 rated, and you're like, oh, this guy's going to be an AHL star. No, he's not. He's probably not going to get ice time in the AHL, actually. So keep that in mind as well. All right, guys, so as we sim to free agency now, you have to think of your scouts as pieces of the organization as well as very similar to the actual players in the organization, meaning that if players are becoming free agents, that means that scouts are probably becoming free agents as well. So that's a good way to think about it. But I will show you guys quickly here. This is what you want to do. You want to go over to your hire staff, or you can go into the scouting section, doesn't really matter, and look at the quality of scouts in here. A minus, A minus, A minus, B, 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 A minus, A minus, A, right? Like there are good scouts in here. You want to get all of these A-rated scouts if you can, as long as it makes sense and actually fits with your team, right? So like a guy like Stephen Bois, or Boyce, however you want to say his name, makes sense to scout the Q for the next 4 years at least. Nathan Segal makes sense to be an OHL scout for this team because he's just better overall. Michael Furchner. That's an interesting name. A+ rated in the USA Central. Why wouldn't you get him going there? We might as well, right? So go in, sign these guys, relocate them, and don't be loyal. That's essentially all I'm saying here. Do not be loyal to your current scouts. You go, okay, I'm getting a Q, I'm getting an OHL, and I'm getting a US Central scout. I'll go and fire 3 of those guys because I'm going to have better options in these regions for scouting without any real work for the most part. All you have to do is just sign them at the right time. So yeah, a guy like Jaden Wagner, let's see, does he have any good scouting regions? OHL or QMJHL, both of those are fairly solid. So yeah, you can build your team out year by year. We got an SHL scout there in Alice Magnuson, and that will heavily improve the effectiveness and quickness of your scouts. If you go and do this, like, that is just, it's going to make such a difference. So look at that. We went and signed 5 scouts. We got pretty much 1 for a whole bunch of different regions. So now when I go to my staff, or I guess I hit coaching staff, it doesn't really matter. You can just bump her over to scouts. Now when I go over to my scouts, I can go, okay, who's my worst SHL scout? Dolak, all right. Sorry, Matthias, you were great. You did some great scouting for us, but we just have a better person coming in to do your job. Essentially, that's just all we're doing here. So try not to fire off any of your B scouts because B scouts are a little bit harder to find, but at the same time, it really just comes down to, okay, who is the most versatile scout out of my 3 here? Who do I probably want to fire off first? In this place, I would probably say Cavallo for the Q, right? Again, you can just go region by region. Probably one of my, actually both my OHL scouts are quite good, so I'm not really going to touch that. I need to fire 1 central scout. So really, again, comes down to, doesn't matter really. It doesn't actually matter if you choose one scout or the other, but usually you can kind of determine by region efficiencies who is the more versatile scout, and you can build out an extremely versatile scouting team. Like, you're going to have pretty much all A and B rated scouts if you do this method. If you're unloyal to your current scouts, I mean, if you want to sit here and grow your scouts year by year, good on you. It's going to take forever, though. That's the only thing I'm going to say. It will take forever. Versus signing a bunch of A and B rated scouts, that's going to improve your scouting speed, efficiency, accuracy, all those things even better. So yeah, just keep that in mind. But that is going to be it for this one. If you guys found this tutorial helpful in any way, shape, or form, please feel free to leave a like down at the bottom of the video. If you have any questions at all, also drop those in the comments. I will try to answer as many of them as I possibly and humanly can. And then that is pretty much it for this video. Also, feel free to subscribe to the channel if you are enjoying my content. And that is it for this one. This is Etanyos signing out, and until next time.